What's going on, everybody? Mike here from RoughCut Tutorials, and welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to have a look at dodging and burning. By the end of this episode, you'll be able to turn this into this. If you're serious about mastering your editing skills, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to know when new tutorials are uploaded. Dodging and burning is the process of manipulating contrast within an image by means of a brush tool. So in Photoshop, we have actually got dodging and burning tools in the tools panel. So if I go over here and I right click on it, I'll have my dodge tool, my burn tool, as well as another one called the sponge tool. So in simple terms, the dodge tool will allow you to lighten up pixel information by means of a brush tool. And exactly the same for the burn tool, however, you're darkening pixel information. And the sponge tool, that's something slightly different. That allows you to either saturate or desaturate colors by means of a brush tool as well. So first things first, if I go to my dodge tool, again, it is a standard brush, so I have exactly the same settings and tools at the top here. So I can choose my brush size. I can make it bigger or smaller, depending on what I need, as well as the hardness or the softness of the brush. Furthermore, we do also have a range. So with your dodge and burning tools, as you're lightening or darkening up pixel information, you can actually choose to lighten or darken certain ranges such as your shadows, your midtones, and your highlights, as well as the intensity of that brush. So you can actually say, per brush stroke, I would like it to be 50% darker, 100% darker, or a lot less, depending on what you want to do. Now, I highly recommend actually working on a smaller percentage, which allows you to actually get a very, very fine control over which area of the image you actually want to lighten or darken. There is one huge problem with using the dodge and burn tools, and that is, unfortunately, that it's very destructive. There is no going back after, let's just say, 25 or 50 brush strokes, depending on your settings within the history panel. So I personally use a completely different method when it actually comes to dodging and burning, to actually try and keep it as less destructive as possible. And that is by doing this. What I would do is, first of all, duplicate the original layer. So you have two layers. And then what we're going to do is go layer, new, layer. And then when this opens up, you can give it a name, that's completely up to you. But what I'm going to do is change my blend mode from normal to overlay. And then from that, I can actually click this little option over here that says fill with overlay neutral color 50% gray. So what that does is it changes up this new layer, is if you have a look here in the layers panel, to actually allow you to dodge and burn on a separate layer by only using your standard brush tool. All right. But now, which color would be dodging and which color would be burning? So burning would be black and dodging would be white. So let's have a look at an example of both. So first of all, let's have a look at my brush settings. So my brush size over here is way too large. So I'm just going to change it up over here. Let's just say now, if I just use my keyboard shortcuts, I'm going to keep mine at about 500 for this example. And again, depending on where in your image, and specifically in this portrait, I'm going to be working on, I would like to make my brush either bigger or slightly smaller. What's also very important is to make sure what opacity you are using this tool on. Now, unfortunately, if you work on 100% opacity, it's going to completely destroy your image. It is working incredibly well, however, that's far too bright. So I would recommend working on an opacity between 8 and 12%. So I'm just going to pull mine down. Let's pull it all the way down, and I'm going to leave mine, for this example, on about 10. And again, what we're doing now is burning. So we are lightening up pixel information. So you'll have to decide which parts of your image you will actually lighten or darken. So an overall guide is that dodging and burning allows you to manipulate contrast. So if I now have got my opacity set to about 10%, I'm working on my white brush, which will replicate the dodge tool, and I am working on a completely separate layer as well. Now I'm good to go and start dodging up. So I'm going to just lightly brush over the cheeks And everything that has a bit of a highlight, I'm going to lighten up. Now you might say, okay, well that doesn't look like it's making much of a difference, but as soon as we actually toggle this new layer that we created, our dodge and burn layer we'll call it, on and off, you will actually see that it's making a huge difference. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to zoom up into my image a bit, and I'm going to go over now to the lips area, and I'm going to make my brush a bit smaller, and these highlights on the lips I'm just going to brush over 3 or 4 times just to give that a bit of a shine. And I'm also going to just go over the teeth over here. The benefit of dodging and burning is that it lightens or darkens up that original color that you're brushing over. So it does not necessarily brush over with white or black. It takes the original color and lightens or darkens it to keep it as realistic as possible. And what's also a great tip is just to continuously toggle this layer on and off just to see what you are actually doing, principally because we are only working at a 10% opacity. So every brush stroke is making a huge difference, even though visually as we're working it doesn't seem to be doing all that much. So after that I'm just going to go over to the eyes, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So I'm still working on my dodge tool. I'm just going to lighten up that section of the eye 3 or 4 times, but I don't want to overdo it to make it look incredibly fake. And let's do the same for this eye. Just to give it a bit of a highlight. So now if I just zoom out a bit, let's just toggle that layer on and off. You can see that it's making a huge difference, but it's actually looking quite nice. And then what you can do is also decide which other parts of the image, aside from just the face, that you would actually lighten up. So I'm actually going to try and get a few highlights in the hair on both sides. So I'm just going to go over here with a few strands. Let's see what difference it's going to make here. So I'm just going to toggle that on and off. Yeah, that is working quite well. And same thing perhaps on this side, just so it doesn't get so lost in the background there. All right, so now that is the dodge section of it, and just to get to the burn tool, it's 100% the same principle. However, we're just going to switch our foreground color to black, and you can do that by hitting these 2 arrows right here. So now that my foreground color is black, what this is going to do is act as a burn tool, which is going to darken pixel information. So I would like to darken up a bit of this makeup over here. So I'm just going to go over that a few times, try and keep it as consistent as possible. So I'm just going over here with 3 brush strokes, and then I'm going to go over to this side of the eye. There's 1 stroke, 2 stroke, and then the 3rd stroke, and exactly the same on the top, and then at the bottom as well. So let's have a look at how that looks with the eyes. So that's actually making a lot more of a difference, as you can clearly see there, just by toggling that dodge and burn layer on and off. So the benefit now is that you've also got the ability to adjust your opacity of your dodging and burning layer. So for example, now if you say that that dodging and burning is way too much, you've got the ability now to actually increase or decrease your opacity of that entire layer. So if I pull that down now to about 85, the eyes are not as intense, nor are my highlights from the burning and the dodging. And now also just keep in mind that it's not only for portraits. You can actually do this with any image you want. So if it's a landscape and you want to make your highlights slightly lighter and your shadows slightly darker, or even vice versa, with this principle of dodging and burning, you definitely can do so. And the benefit of doing it this way with a new layer, and then changing your opacity of that layer to overlay and clicking that little tick button that says fill with overlay neutral color 50% gray, which will create this, is that it's not affecting your original layers at all. It's just a separate layer that applies your dodging and burning directly to this image. And there you have it. Thank you very much for watching, and tune in next time for another exciting tutorial. If you have any suggestions or what you would like me to cover in a future episode, be sure to drop it in the comments below. Please show your support for this channel by subscribing and smashing that like button.